Have you ever walked into a crowded room and felt completely invisible? Not metaphorically, but truly wondered if anyone would notice if you simply ceased to exist. This isn't just idle speculation. It's perhaps the most profound question. We can ask ourselves about our place in this vast, interconnected world. If you vanished today, completely and without warning, how long would it take for someone to notice? An hour? A day? A week? And once they noticed, what ripples would your absence create in the fabric of reality? These questions aren't morbid, they're illuminating. They reveal something essential about human connection, meaning, and the quiet impact we have on countless lives without ever realizing it. We live in the age of hyperconnectivity. The average person has hundreds of friends on social media, sends dozens of messages daily, and is constantly bombarded with notifications demanding attention. Yet paradoxically, loneliness has reached epidemic proportions. How can we be so connected yet feel so isolated? How can we interact with so many people yet wonder if our existence matters to anyone at all? The ancient Stoic philosophers practiced an exercise called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They would visualize their own deaths not out of morbid fascination, but to gain perspective on what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think." This wasn't pessimism, it was clarity. When we consider our own disappearance, we're forced to confront uncomfortable truths. The world will continue spinning, the sun will rise. Most systems we participate in have built-in redundancies. Someone will take our shift, complete our projects, or fill our role. The universe, in its grand indifference, will barely notice our absence. But that's not the complete story, is it? The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of Dasein, our unique way of being in the world. Each of us exists not as an isolated entity, but as a nexus of relationships, interactions, and influences. We are defined not just by our physical presence, but by the invisible web of connections we've woven throughout our lives. Consider the thought experiment proposed by Frank Capra's classic film, It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey is shown what his town would have looked like if he had never been born. The changes are profound and far-reaching. Lives that would have been lost remain saved. Businesses that would have failed continue to thrive. An entire community's character is fundamentally altered by the absence of just one person. This isn't mere sentimentality. It's an illustration of what complexity theorists call the butterfly effect, the notion that small causes can have large effects across complex systems. Each of us, regardless of fame or fortune, creates ripples that extend far beyond our awareness. The Buddhist concept of interdependent origination, pratyasamutpada, teaches that nothing exists independently. Everything arises in dependence upon multiple causes and conditions. Your existence, your specific way of being in the world, creates conditions that shape countless other lives in ways both subtle and profound. Think about the barista you greet every morning. Your simple smile and thank you might be the moment of human connection that sustains them through a difficult day. The colleague whose work you complimented in passing might have been on the verge of giving up until your words gave them the confidence to continue. The stranger you helped with directions might tell that story for years as an example of human kindness. We rarely see these ripples. We toss pebbles into ponds and walk away before the waves reach the shore, but they reach the shore nonetheless. French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas argued that our very humanity is defined by our responsibility to the other, those whose lives intersect with ours. In his view, we become fully human, not through self-actualization, but through recognizing our ethical obligation to those around us. Your disappearance would create a void in this web of ethical relationships, a void that cannot be perfectly filled by anyone else. Consider your uniqueness for a moment, not in the superficial sense that parents tell children they're special, but in the mathematical reality of your specific configuration. The probability of your exact genetic makeup is approximately 1 in 10 to 2,017,000 $. A number so large, it exceeds the atoms in the known universe. Add to this the specific circumstances of your birth, the experiences that shaped you, the knowledge You've accumulated the relationships you've formed, and you become quite literally irreplaceable. This irreplaceability exists even in our most routine interactions. Philosopher Gabriel Marcel distinguished between problem and mystery. A problem is something external that can be solved with the right technique. A mystery is something in which we ourselves are involved, something that alters us as we engage with it. Your relationships are not problems to be solved, but mysteries in which you are fundamentally implicated. Your disappearance would not just remove a functional component from a system. It would transform the very nature of countless mysteries unfolding around you. The realization that our absence would create a genuine void can be both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it places upon us the weight of responsibility for how we affect others. Liberating because it affirms that our existence matters, that we are not merely passive observers of life, but active participants whose presence shapes reality itself. But what about those who feel their disappearance would go unnoticed? Those who wake each morning feeling disconnected, who move through crowds feeling unseen, who wonder if their absence would register even as a blip on anyone's radar. This feeling is more common than you might imagine. In our productivity-obsessed culture, we've conflated visibility with value. We measure worth by metrics, followers, likes, economic output, professional achievements. If these numbers are low, we believe our impact must be negligible. This is a profound miscalculation of how human connection actually works. Sociologist Charles Horton Cooley described what he called the looking glass self, the idea that our sense of self is largely derived from how we believe others see us. But this mirror can be distorted. Depression, anxiety, and isolation can create a funhouse mirror that minimizes our importance and magnifies our insignificance. We begin to believe that our disappearance would be met with indifference when the reality would be anything but. Here's a sobering truth. According to research, most people drastically underestimate the negative impact their death would have on others. Studies of bereavement show that the loss of even peripheral relationships can trigger profound grief. The barista who knows your order, the neighbor you nod to each morning, the online community where you occasionally comment, all would experience your absence as a genuine loss, even if they can't articulate exactly why. The ancient Greeks had two words for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos refers to sequential time, minutes, hours, days passing in succession. Kairos refers to the right or opportune moment, a time of possibility and significance that cannot be measured by a clock. Your life creates kairos moments for others in ways you cannot foresee. Your question at exactly the right moment, your presence when someone needs it most, your unique insight that shifts a conversation, these cannot be replicated or replaced. Harvard sociologist Mario Louis Small discovered in his research that people confide their deepest secrets and most pressing problems not just to close friends, but often to weak ties, acquaintances with whom they interact regularly, but not intimately. The checkout clerk, the regular at the same coffee shop, the person in the neighboring cubicle. These relationships create spaces of unexpected intimacy and support. Your disappearance would close these essential spaces of human connection. And then there are the connections we never see at all. The person who overhears your conversation and is moved by something you say. The child who watches how you handle a difficult situation and learns from your example. The artist who glimpses you on the street and incorporates something of your essence into their work. We are constantly influencing the world in ways that remain forever invisible to us. Physicist David Bohm proposed the concept of implicate order, the idea that the universe operates as a giant, undivided whole in which each part contains information about the entire system. Applied to human relationships, this suggests that each interaction contains within it the entire history of our connections and ripples outward in ways we cannot comprehend. Your disappearance would not just remove one node from a network, it would fundamentally alter the information contained within the entire system. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." This isn't mystical hyperbole. It's an acknowledgement of our profound interconnection. Each of us contains within ourselves the imprint of countless others, and we in turn leave our imprint on everyone we encounter. These imprints remain even in absence, perhaps becoming even more apparent when we're gone. Consider the concept of negative space in art, the space around and between subjects. Artists know that negative space defines the subject as much as the subject itself. Your absence would create a negative space that would highlight, perhaps for the first time, the precise shape of your presence in others' lives. One of the most affecting demonstrations of this truth comes from an unlikely source: social media memorials. When someone dies, their online profiles often become spaces of collective remembrance, where people share stories of brief encounters, small kindnesses, and moments of connection the deceased may never have recognized as significant. Reading these tributes, one is struck by how many lives we touch without realizing it. How many people would indeed notice if we disappeared? But we needn't wait for our disappearance to recognize this truth. We can cultivate what philosopher Simone Weil called attention, the purest form of generosity, the ability to be fully present with another human being. When we practice attention, we become aware of our interconnection. We see how our existence creates a unique configuration of possibilities in every moment. The 20th century Jewish philosopher Martin Buber distinguished between I-it relationships, where we treat others as objects to be used, and I-thou relationships, where we recognize the irreducible uniqueness of another person. When we enter into I-thou relationships, we understand that each person we encounter represents a universe of meaning that would be fundamentally altered by our absence. There's a thought experiment in ethics called the experience machine. Philosopher Robert Nozick asked, if there were a machine that could give you any experience you desired, perfect happiness, remarkable achievements, deep relationships, while you were actually floating in a tank with electrodes attached to your brain, would you choose to plug in for life? Most people say no. They want not just the experience of connection, but actual connection with reality and others. Your physical presence in the world, your embodied reality, matters in a way that cannot be simulated or replaced. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote extensively about the single individual, his term for the unique, irreplaceable person who stands before God. For Kierkegaard, each person has a specific vocation or calling that only they can fulfill. Your disappearance would leave that calling unanswered, that specific contribution unmade. Even for those who feel most invisible, this remains true. The person struggling with deep depression, whose quiet resilience inspires others without their knowledge. The introverted thinker, whose rare but profound insights shift conversations in subtle but important ways. The person who feels like a burden, but whose vulnerability creates spaces where others can be authentic. None of these contributions register on conventional metrics of success or influence, yet all would leave a palpable void if they disappeared. There's another dimension to this question that merits exploration. If you disappeared today, who would notice first? The answer reveals something important about where you've invested your relational energy, about the quality and nature of your connections. Would it be family members checking in when their texts go unanswered? Colleagues wondering why you missed a meeting? Friends concerned when you don't respond to plans? Or would it be more peripheral figures? The delivery person who notices your packages piling up? The landlord who realizes rent hasn't been paid? The utility company sending automated notices about missed payments? This isn't about judgment. There's no correct answer. But it's worth considering whether the people who would first notice your absence are the people you most want to be connected with. Our modern lives often create a disparity between the relationships we value and the relationships that structure our daily existence. Your disappearance would illuminate this disparity in stark terms. Philosopher Emmanuel Levinas spoke of the face of the other, the encounter with another person that places upon us an infinite ethical demand. In his view, the face-to-face encounter is the foundation of ethics itself. Your specific face, your unique way of being present to others, creates ethical possibilities that no one else can create. Your disappearance would not just remove one ethical agent from the world, it would transform the ethical landscape for everyone you encounter. Consider also the philosophical concept of moral luck developed by Thomas Nagel and Bernard Williams. They argued that factors outside our control, including whom we happen to encounter in life, profoundly shape our moral experiences and possibilities. Your existence creates moral luck for others. You provide opportunities for kindness, understanding, forgiveness, and growth that would not exist in precisely the same way without you. The Maori concept of whanaungatanga describes the idea that our identities exist through our relationships, not just with other people, but with places, things, and ideas. In this worldview, your disappearance would not just affect other individuals. It would transform entire relational networks that give meaning to many lives. Quantum physics suggests that at the subatomic level, particles that have interacted remain connected regardless of distance, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. Similarly, once you've entered someone's life, you've altered their reality in ways that persist even in your absence. Your disappearance would not erase these alterations, but would change their nature, transforming connection into memory. The how. Psychiatrist Irvin Yalom identifies 4 ultimate concerns that all humans must confront: death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. Your relationships help others navigate these concerns. You provide witness to others' existence, affirmation of their freedom, bridges across their isolation, and context for meaning. Your disappearance would require others to reconfigure how they address these fundamental aspects of human existence. So what can we take from this thought experiment? If you disappeared today, would anyone notice? The answer is unequivocally yes, though perhaps not in the ways or on the timeline you might imagine. The more profound question is, knowing that your disappearance would matter, how might you choose to be present differently? Not to maximize your importance or to make others dependent on you, but to be intentional about the relational spaces you create and maintain. Perhaps it means being more fully present in the relationships you already have, practicing what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow in your interpersonal connections. Perhaps it means expanding your circle of concern, recognizing that even peripheral relationships carry moral weight and meaning. Perhaps it means allowing yourself to receive care and attention from others, acknowledging that relationships are reciprocal and that your willingness to be supported creates opportunities for others to express their own humanity. Philosopher John Dewey suggested that communication creates community, that in sharing experiences, we create something larger than ourselves. Your unique way of communicating, your tone, your insights, your questions, your silences, helps create communities that would be irrevocably altered by your absence. This is true whether you're leading a boardroom or quietly participating in an online forum. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus encouraged his students to remember that they are actors in a play assigned a specific role by the director. Your job, he said, is to act well the part that is given to you. Your disappearance would leave a role unfilled in countless unfolding dramas, from family systems to workplace dynamics to community narratives. No understudy could capture your specific interpretation of these roles. In the end, the question, if you disappeared today, would anyone notice, invites us to recognize a fundamental truth about human existence. We matter to each other in ways we cannot fully comprehend. Our presence creates possibilities, our attention validates reality, our care sustains others through difficulties, our unique perspective expands collective understanding. You are not incidental to the world around you. You are essential to it, not despite your ordinary imperfect humanity, but because of it. Your disappearance would not just remove one person from the world, it would transform the world itself in cascading ways that would extend far beyond your awareness. So perhaps the better question is not whether anyone would notice if you disappeared, but whether you notice the profound impact you're already having simply by being present, by paying attention, by caring, by existing in your specific way in this specific time and place. The Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa wrote, "To be great, be whole. Exclude nothing, exaggerate nothing that is not you. Be whole in everything. Put all you are into the smallest thing you do. The whole moon gleams in every pool." Your wholeness, your specific way of being in the world, gleams in every interaction, every relationship, every community you touch. If you disappeared today, that light would go out, and the world would be darker for it, not because you are perfect, not because you are extraordinary, but because you are you, irreducibly, irreplaceably you, and that has always been enough.